Welcome to Little Steps, Big Gains and phase 1 of our 30-day pelvic floor strengthening program. In this video, I'm going to talk about phase 1, what we're going to do, how we're going to do these exercises, and why we're going to take this approach. After this video will actually be a session so you can see the exercises, but don't skip this video as it's really important to set us up for success. So as a review, in our 30-day program, we are going to walk through 2 phases with 3 steps. Together, we're going to first learn how to recognize the pelvic floor. We're going to learn techniques to contract, kind of activate it. Then we're going to learn techniques to completely relax, lengthen, and stretch it out because that is so important. That'll be phase 1. Phase 2, together, we are going to learn timing and coordination of those muscles. Phase 1, step 1, learn how to recognize the pelvic floor. Okay, so this is our pelvis. If I flip it down, the pelvic floor has 2 muscles, okay? And they together attach the pubic bone in front to the tailbone in back. It's a hammock, okay? Now it is connected on the side of the sits bones by what's called connective tissue or fascial attachments. So put it all together and it creates a floor on the bottom of your pelvis that holds up your entire core, okay? It's on the bottom. So it absolutely needs to be pretty darn strong, right? So that is the purpose of this program. Now, first step is learning how to recognize it. This is so important because I have people, we start our program and they tell me, I have no idea if I'm using the right muscles. And so this is a way to give you biofeedback. It is called the Tinkle test. Now look at the word test. It's not exercise. This is not an exercise, it's a test. All right, so I have people go to the bathroom, sit on the toilet, and I tell them, okay, well, I'm not watching them, okay, but I give them instructions and I say, okay, go ahead and urinate, and I want you to go ahead and use some muscles to stop the flow of urine. Pay attention, that is your pelvic floor. Those muscles there, they stopped the flow of urine. Now I want you to completely relax them, all right? That gives you feedback as to, am I even recruiting the right muscles, okay? So that's first and foremost. Second, when you do that, okay, it's not an exercise, but when you do that, pay attention to what muscles you did not use, okay? Did you have to suck in your belly button? Did you have to squeeze your butt muscles? How about your thighs? No, because those muscles are separate and different, okay? So when we do our exercises, our belly is going to be relaxed. Same thing with our butt and our thighs. We're going to isolate those pelvic floor muscles. So using the Tinkle test is a way to recognize the pelvic floor. It's not an exercise in case people tell you that because it can kind of confuse the brain and the body. We don't need more confusion in life, do we? All right, so that is step 1, learn how to recognize the pelvic floor. Phase 1, step 2, we are going to learn pelvic floor muscle activation and relaxation. And we have 3 specific strategies that we are going to use to maximize our benefits. All right, so first and foremost, let's focus on pelvic floor muscle activation. Your pelvic floor has 3 main layers up and down, okay? Within those layers, there are 2 types of muscle fibers. And this is so important because this is our first strategy to actually target both of those muscle fibers separately, individually, and alternate between them, okay? So let's talk about that. Out of those 3 layers, the very, very top layer, okay, that holds up the core. That layer is mostly comprised of what is called a type 1 slow twitch muscle fiber. These function more for endurance and long hold, and that makes sense if it's holding up your core, right? But these types of muscle fibers don't have as much power. So the bottom 2 layers of your hammock are mostly comprised of a type 2 muscle fiber, which is fast twitch, and these focus or function more for hard, fast, quick muscle contractions, but just don't have a lot of endurance. So knowing that in our head, that there's these 2 types of fibers with 2 different functions, we are going to maximize our benefit by alternating between them. Okay, Now our next strategy is actually to target our hip muscles as well. So on the outside of our hips, we have what's called external rotators that actually rotate our hips out. Now, external rotators, those muscles that go on the outside of the hip, creep through the pelvis and also attach to the connections, the fascial tissue, the connections of our pelvic floor. So it's kind of like, think of a hammock with strings. When I rotate my hips out, those strings come in and the pelvic floor relaxes, okay? Or it lengthens, all right? So we have it a little bit longer. Then when I rotate those hips back, the strings of the hammock tighten up, okay? Or they pull it up. So the big question that, a lot of the researchers were asking is if we strengthen only the external rotators, okay, because that's also an avenue to lift and relax that hammock, what if we just focus on those? Does that benefit the pelvic floor? Yes. Isn't that crazy? Indirectly, these research studies that had females or research subjects only focus on their external rotators indirectly strengthened the pelvic floor. Now, not quite as much, but there was a benefit there. So for that reason, we are going to include hip external rotation, and that is our strategy number 2 for pelvic floor muscle activation. So what do the exercises look like? Okay, so for pelvic floor muscle activation, let's start with the top layer of the hammock. As you recall, that is mostly comprised of these endurance muscle fibers, okay? So they are responsible for lifting, holding, but they don't quite have that power. So to do this, we're going to do elevator exercises. I want you to pretend like your pelvic floor is on an elevator. We're going to slowly go up, 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 level by level, and hold it at the top. All right, so to do this, I want you to have very, very good posture. Try not to lean back on anything. Sit up tall with good posture, all right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to externally rotate our hips. And what I mean by that is if your feet are hip width apart, take your toes and point them out. When you do that, the strings of the hammock pull in and it helps relax the pelvic floor. So we're going to be relaxed, which we will talk about later. Okay, so from here, we're going to rotate our toes in, lift that hammock up, okay, up on the elevator level by level, and hold it at the top. All right, I know you can't really see this on me, okay, but I'm holding the elevator at the top. Then we are going to bring our toes out, all right, relax the pelvic floor, lower our elevator level by level to the bottom. That is called an elevator exercise. Let me demonstrate again. All right, my toes are out, I'm relaxed. I'm going to bring them in and lift the elevator. Hold it at the top, okay? Then I'm going to lower the elevator and bring it out. That is an elevator exercise. Now, how long do you hold it at the top? That's a great question. Our goal is to get up to 10 seconds. 10 repetitions. That is our goal. But I need people to start with where they are at. So sometimes I have people, okay, I want you to hold it for 3 seconds. Bring it out. I want to see how are we doing with that. While we do this, we want our belly completely relaxed, okay? We don't want to be squeezing in our belly button. Now we're increasing the inner abdominal pressure to the point that we could be bearing down on the pelvic floor instead of lifting it up. The belly needs to stay completely relaxed. Same thing with the butt muscles, okay? And we're not really squeezing our thighs. We're just rotating them in and out. That's what we're doing there. All right, so the belly's completely relaxed. So if I have people bring the elevator in, hold it at the top, and I start to see that belly button squeezing in, or we're starting to fatigue by using the wrong muscles, holding our breath, then we need to stop right then and there, even if we're only at 3 seconds. That means that you start at 3 seconds and work your way up till you get to 10 seconds, all right? Because we're all starting at different levels. I don't want to start everyone off at 10 seconds if we're not ready for that. So that means twice a day, I'll walk you through this. You're going to do elevator exercises where you're going to be relaxing, okay? Bringing the feet in, lifting the elevator, holding at the top. Wherever you're at, the goal is to get to 10 seconds. Bring it out and relax the elevator, okay? In between our relaxing the elevator, we will go into our breathing, all right? That's next. Right now, you and I are talking about elevators, bringing them up, holding, bringing them out. 10 repetitions twice a day. That is for our top layer, those type 1 muscle fibers. Next, let's talk about those power muscle fibers, those bottom 2 layers, okay? Those fast twitch. So for this, we are targeting power. We are going to do power flicks. So this is where you relax your tummy, relax your butt muscles, okay? It's hard. Got to target the pelvic floor alone. Very difficult. You'll get better at it. Relax the belly, try to relax the butt muscles, and squeeze only that pelvic floor. Fast, hard power flicks, okay? Your goal is to do this 1 time a day, in the middle of the day, to get up to 25. That's not easy, okay? So you want to start where you're at. So if you do power flicks and you do 8 good ones, and then you start to get tired to where you're using your belly or squeezing your butt, or you're really struggling, you're fatiguing, stop. All right, start at 8. Work your way up. So everything is written down in the handout, okay? But for the pelvic floor muscle contractions, we have twice a day of our elevator exercises. You're going to do 10 repetitions. Your goal is to get up to 10 seconds. All right. And I have a whole session demonstrating this. Once a day, in the middle of the day, you have your power flicks. Fast, hard, powerful muscle contractions. Your goal is to get up to 25. Next, let's talk about those hip rotators, okay? Specifically external rotation. All right, so hang in there with me. This is a concept that might require practice, repetition to fully grasp. So play that replay button or just press replay for the section if you need to really grasp it, and that's okay. All right, first and foremost, when you rotate your toes, it actually rotates your hip bones, the femurs, okay, because everything's connected. So when I rotate my toes out, it takes my femurs, my hip bones, and it also rotates them. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Your toes rotate your hips. Cool, right? Second thing to know, on the outside of the hip bones are these muscles, specifically called the obturator internus, that actually comes through the pelvis and attaches to your hammock, your pelvic floor. So now if you put that together, that means when you rotate your femur out, it takes those muscles of the hammock and brings them in. And what happens if you bring the strings of the hammock close together? It allows the hammock to relax and lengthen down. Then we go ahead and bring our toes in. It pulls those strings apart and it lifts the hammock up. Now this is a visual. Technically your hammock goes front to back, but just for the sake of a visual. All right, so our hammock is upright because the strings are pulled apart. Now, when I rotate my toes out, it brings the strings together and allows the hammock to lengthen down. Pull the strings apart, pull the strings together. That's going to take some practice to really get the hang of, okay? Seems simple, but sometimes we think the reverse, okay? And if you need to take a visual like a belt or something and do this to really kind of get the visual, that's okay too. All right, that is why in and of itself, researchers said, hey, can we just strengthen the strings of the hammock and still get strength benefits? Yes, yes, yes. And we talked about that. Indirect strengthening was found just by going ahead and recruiting that obturator internus, strengthening those muscles. That is why we are doing that. That's exactly why we're doing it. So we're going to do 2 exercises to strengthen those muscles. And I recommend that you do these 3 times a week. And if you're getting overwhelmed, remember that although these exercises are 3 times a day, they're only 5 minutes or less. So we're only really putting in about 15 minutes a day. That is manageable. It's just grasping all of the sequencing, which is in the handout. All right, so 3 times a week, we're going to strengthen those external rotators via 2 exercises. First, we're gonna do an isometric exercise, and then we're gonna do step overs. Both of them are in sitting, so that way we're all in this together. So feet are gonna be together for our first one. And isometric is when you do not lengthen or shorten a muscle, but you still recruit it, all right, or contract it. So in this position, your feet will be together. You're going to take your knees and try to separate them, because that is a way to also externally rotate the hips, okay? However, in order to kind of contract those muscles, we're going to stop the motion. So you can do this with your hands as one option by putting your hands on the outside of your hips or your knees, trying to separate your knees, but use your hands to stop the motion. That's an isometric. Good posture, you get an arm workout at the same time. Option B is to use something like a belt, a rope, a dog leash, something like that. So you can put that underneath your knees around, okay? Hold it tight. Same exact concept. I'm gonna try to separate my knees, but whatever you're using there, okay, I'm using a belt, is resisting the motion, and now I'm isometrically strengthening those external rotators. So that is going to be your first exercise. There is an option of using a band, and phase 2 will have bands as an option, but not everybody owns bands, and so I don't, I hate to require it, although phase 2 will recommend it. It's not a requirement. Now, the thing about bands is when you use it, you actually will go ahead and, finish the motion. The range of motion will be in there, but the resistance will also be there. All right, so that is option A. Those are 3 options for our first exercise, hip rotation isometrically. Now, the second exercise we're going to do is step overs, okay? So this is where we're going to go ahead and you're going to lift. Our feet are hip width apart. You're going to take your leg, lift, rotate the toe out, step onto the outside. Lift, rotate the toe in, and step back. In your head, think about stepping in and out of a bathtub, in and out of a car. All right, so we're going to have good posture, and we're going to step and rotate, step and rotate. Make sure that toe rotates while you step in and out. We're going to go ahead and do 10 on one side, 10 on the other side. So those are the 2 exercises because we're already moving those muscles. So just the 2 of them, 3 times a week. I'm going to recommend that we do 3 sets of 10 of them. I have a whole exercise session, an extra video that you can always just replay and do these exercises with me, as well as follow the handout if it gets overwhelming. But I know you can do this, all right? Because we are in this together. Next is pelvic floor muscle relaxation. This is so important, and it's often a step that is overlooked. But that pelvic floor, we need to learn how to lengthen, relax, and stretch it out. All of our muscles need range of motion. They need to be able to lengthen and shorten. That pelvic floor is the same concept, okay? We need to be able to relax it so the bladder can store urine, okay? So in order to relax the pelvic floor, to lengthen and stretch it, we are going to use the diaphragm. That is our third secret strategy, using the diaphragm to lengthen and stretch out the pelvic floor. How does that work? Well, the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle underneath your lungs and your heart that faces down, okay? It's the largest muscle that you use for breathing. So when you inhale, that diaphragm, that dome, lowers down so that you can take the oxygen in. Then when you exhale, that diaphragm passively recoils back up. You can expel your carbon dioxide. That is how the diaphragm operates when we breathe. So how does that connect with the pelvic floor? Great question. So what we can do is we can lower the diaphragm down, relax the pelvic floor, okay? Do you see how they would move together then? They're supposed to move together. All right, so we lower the diaphragm, and then that also is going to lengthen the pelvic floor down, all right? So if we combine this with our hip rotators, we are going to breathe in through the nose, lower the diaphragm. Sometimes people call this belly breathing because we want our belly to stick out. If your belly sticks out, it means your diaphragm is down there pushing against the abdominal cavity. So that's a good thing. It's also called diaphragmatic breathing or three-dimensional breathing because that dome, we want it to lengthen and stretch out forwards, sideways, backwards, in all directions. So I like the term three-dimensional breathing. But anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in through the nose, lower that diaphragm down, relax your pelvic floor like you're laying an egg, okay? Completely relax it, let it stretch out. Then you're going to exhale through the mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Bring those toes back forwards. I'll demonstrate all this, but I'd like to show you again. Okay, so once again, we are going to breathe in, lower the pelvic floor, so your belly should stick out. Breathe out, bring it back in. You just lengthened, relaxed, and stretched out your pelvic floor by doing that. We cannot skip these. So in order to include these, they are kind of integrated throughout our exercises. In other words, between each elevator exercise, you're going to add these breathing strategies, 2 of them between each one. That way, not only are you learning how to contract and hold those muscle fibers, but you're going to completely relax, stretch out, and lengthen the pelvic floor so you can get it in its full range of motion. So between your elevator exercises, you're going to be doing 2 of those breaths. All right. Then for your power flicks, you're going to start and end with these, okay? That way you start your session by relaxing, stretching out that pelvic floor, work on your quick flicks, and then end with those, all right? This is all written down for you in the handout with your schedule below. So as a review, twice a day, you are going to do your elevator exercises, okay? Really working on those endurance muscle fibers where you bring in, you up, hold, and squeeze that pelvic floor. Your goal is to be able to hold it for 10 seconds, 10 times, twice a day. In between your elevators, you're going to get to do that deep breathing, relaxing, stretching out the pelvic floor. All of this is in the handout in the description. 1 time a day, usually in the middle of the day, you're going to do your power flicks. Fast, hard, powerful. Your goal is to get up to 25. But for your power flicks, you'll start and end with those deep breathing exercises to stretch out, relax the pelvic floor. Then the third thing you're going to do is you're going to focus on those external rotators, specifically the obturator and turnus. 2 exercises, all right? 3 times a week. You're going to include those in one of your elevator sessions. That is what we're going to do. Now that would be phase 1, and it sounds like a lot, but it's all written down, and feel free to contact me with questions on this. Once you reach those strength thresholds, in other words, once you're able to do 10 sets of 10 elevator exercises twice a day, in your power flicks 25 times in the middle of the day without fatigue, okay? If you start to fatigue, stop. Once you're able to hit those strength thresholds, you are ready for phase 2, because here we learned how to contract, relax the pelvic floor, those components. Phase 2, we need to learn timing and coordination. All right, so here you are, phase 1. Stick around if you want to see a sample session, but we're in this together. You did it. You hung around and stuck through our first video of our 30-day pelvic floor strengthening challenge, phase 1. It sounds like a lot, but remember I have that handout. Remember you can contact me, and remember I'm doing a video that walks through these that you can just follow that video every single time and do the exercises with me as an option, because we're all in this together. Now remember those other things I recommend. Keep a log. Log how often you're going to the bathroom. If you're going, are you having leakage? What is triggering that? How many incontinence products are you going through? Keep a log to show progress. Number 2, find a friend or a community. This can be through a Facebook support group. Comment below, like the videos, interact with me, find a friend community. And then the third thing is that calendar. It might help organize everything. And I also recommend, if it's on your phone, typing in or writing in that big letter A when you finish, because you're amazing for doing this. So thank you for joining. I'm thrilled that you're here. Together, little steps, we can make some big gains.